Hey folks, Judd Zolgad, Andrew Kramer, 1500ESPN.com. Thanks for coming to the website. Vikings minicamp at Winter Park. We're not there right now, but Andrew has wrapped up day one. All right, young man, observations from the last hurrah before training camp. What's the lead story here?
Well, to me, it was Taylor Mays getting released, a guy who had spent 3 years with Mike Zimmer in Cincinnati, a former second-round pick, USC standout at safety, and gets released the first day of mandatory minicamp. So obviously, and Mike Zimmer didn't want to talk about it. He basically said it didn't work out. He's going to leave it at that. So we're waiting for something to come up in terms of whether it was an internal argument, whatever that might have happened to force this early exit, because you don't spend a free agent contract on a guy that you only want to look for a cup of coffee and OTAs and then cut. So something seemed to have popped up there, but that limits now the safety rotation down to guys like Robert Blanton, Antone Exum, Andrew Sendejo, basically all the familiar faces, because now Taylor Mays was the only free agent signing outside of the undrafted kid, Anthony Harris. So now they got basically four guys. Prater's still getting looks at safety, but he's nowhere near the top team. So seems like that safety competition's down to Antone Exum, Robert Blanton, and Andrew Sendejo. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Mike Zimmer.
We're back to that again?
We really are. Mike Zimmer.
Who's the favorite then? Exum?
Well, Blanton.
With these guys?
It would be Robert Blanton. Robert Blanton's still
not going to stay on the field. He never stays on the field.
Robert Blanton's still taking the first team reps right now with next to safety Harrison Smith. So they've still got the Notre Dame duo back there.
Okay.
We'll see if it pans out at all. But obviously they have 5 preseason games and an entire training camp to get that all worked out. Teddy Bridgewater, though, however, spoke today, and he was talking about how it was difficult at times to build a rapport with a guy like Cordero Patterson, who's still working with the second-team offense, but he's getting to know guys like Kyle Rudolph, who was out for most of last year, and Mike Wallace, a new addition in the offense. And really the key word for all of this, and we talked about it on the Purple Podcast, is balance, and finally getting a balance to this offense. After they threw the ball 60% of the time last year, you bring in a guy obviously like Adrian Peterson who should skew that a little bit toward the middle. Judd, do you expect it to be a half and half, or do you expect it to still be Teddy's offense?
Oh, good question. I think it's Bridgewater's offense, but I think the more it's split, the better, which is the Peterson dynamic to me, and this goes back to a year ago. What were all our conversations? What's Peterson going to be like in Norv Turner's offense? And we had these conversations right up through week one, and then that was it. So we're back to that now. I believe, though, that if you look at Peterson's career, he joined the Vikings as a 7th overall pick in 2007. Yep. I think the one year that you look at and you say ideal is 2009, right? Mm-hmm. Brett Favre's great year. And I'm not comparing Bridgewater to Favre, but look at who the Vikings have run through as Peterson's quarterback. Tavares Jackson, a brief dose of Kelly Holcomb, Brooks Bollinger, Gus Farad. It just goes on and on. 2009 is the one year where he had a quarterback who basically could use play action, and Brett Favre turned Sidney Rice into a deep threat. And what happened then? Peterson has played 16 games in his career 3 times, so not very many times. But in 2009, he actually had a career low rushing total in a 16-game season, but he also caught a career-high 43 passes. Yep. He had 18 rushing touchdowns, which is off the charts. That's not possible, again, I don't think. But the point being, it's not the rushing yards that are important. It's the threat of Peterson with a good quarterback, and this goes to show, and it's sad, how many times the Peterson throughout his career as a Viking has not had a competent quarterback, Andrew?
Yes, exactly. And I think the biggest comparison when you're looking at the NFL today would have to be Seattle, right? And when you're talking about a workhorse running back like a Marshawn Lynch and a young quarterback like a Russell Wilson, now both of those two, and Teddy Bridgewater and Adrian Peterson, have completely different skill sets compared to those two guys, but it's still a similar dynamic when you talk about how can one help the other. The Vikings, like the Seahawks, don't want their quarterback running all over the field and getting hit and taking those 5-10-yard gains, scrambling. They want him scrambling and then throwing the ball downfield and letting Adrian take all those hits. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be a similar build-up here. The Seattle Seahawks were one of the more balanced teams in the NFL last year. They ran the ball, they threw the ball 53% of the time, ran at 47%. Vikings were throwing it 60% of the time, like the Packers, the Patriots, all these other teams that try to lean on their quarterback. I think you're going to see now more of a balance kind of shift to the middle. And when we watch it at practice too, we see that with Teddy Bridgewater, where he's under center a little bit more. He's not in the shotgun as often. He's handing the ball off a lot more in practice than he's used to in terms of just throwing it with the second team. Because really, when you're with the second team, you just want to see those guys. You want to see the quarterbacks be able to throw it. You're not really worried about, okay, how does Matt Asiato look in practice running the ball?
He's tipping the ball up, by the way.
Exactly.
For interceptions, just like he did last year.
Jeez. You got to be rough on the guy, don't you?
Asiato's a good guy. But, Bridgewater's comfort, and this is hard to judge in June, I get that, but having watched him through access to OTAs and now that this first day of this camp, Does he look like he's become more in control of things? Does he? And he certainly evolved during the 2014 season as well.
Yeah.
I give him credit for that. But does he look like this is morphing more and more into his offense? Because that's the one thing that you can tell off-season camp, training camp. That's not that important. What's important is when you can sort of tell that a guy goes from, I have to run this offense, to being, no, I'm in charge of this offense.
Yeah, they're still not installing any audibles or any kind of switches and stuff like that, so it's difficult to test to see, okay, is he more in control at the line? That stuff we'll see in training camp. But now when you're talking about in the huddle, just yelling at guys, getting in guys' faces, being a little bit more commanding, yes, I absolutely...
Matt Khalil, does he yell at Matt Khalil?
No, he has not yelled at Matt Khalil.
Can I go yell at Matt Khalil?
You cannot, sure, but you can't yell at any offensive lineman here because they're not getting beat by anybody because nobody's rushing or touching each other, which is unfortunate football to watch because they're in shorts and helmets. So
but I don't want him hurt. I told you that before.
You can't evaluate stuff. You want who hurt?
I don't want him hurt. I said I don't want to get. Okay. No, I said I don't want to get guys hurt. I don't want them hitting each other. They're not supposed to, and I don't want to because I don't want ACLs torn in June.
Yeah, when you see it with Dante Fowler and other guys, but no, you do see Teddy more. And the one thing I want to see with Teddy too is that hard count. Something that got mocked actually multiple times last year by defenses, where he'd give a hard count. I remember it was the Carolina Panther game where you could slow down and actually listen to the audio. It was in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't a close game by any means. So that's why I'm sure you get Panther guy jawing, but you get it slowed down, you get Bridgewater saying the hard count, and you hear a linebacker saying, like, yeah, you think we're going to fall for that? And come on, man, you got to do better than that.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. We heard that multiple times.
You've never talked about that.
Yes, I have.
Not with us.
Oh, well,
that's great stuff.
Yes, and that's something where you get a young quarterback. A kid came out a year early from college. It's not like he had 4 years in college. He only had 3, and so he really, truly was a rookie, 9 months removed from Louisville when he started his first game in the NFL. That's something you want to see kind of come along, is that hard count, more of a Brett Favre-like, and actually selling it as opposed to just whimpering into it.
Defensive side of the ball, what's up?
Oh, it was a great day for the defense on Tuesday. Today, Mike Zimmer actually praised the defense and said in the same light he wants to see more from his offense, because there were tip passes all over the place, interceptions, not just from Teddy, but you're talking about Sean Hill, Taylor Heineke, all these backup quarterbacks really aren't on target too well, and the defenders are getting after it. I saw it today. It was Jabari Price completely maul Jarius Wright, and to a point where all the defensive coaches are saying, you got to stop. You got to keep these guys up and stop knocking these guys over. That. Yeah, you can't even do that when you have pads on.
Pro Football Talk's going to write this up now and get the Vikings in trouble because of what you just said.
Right. So you see guys being more physical in the secondary. Terrence Newman's looking good out there. Trey Wayne's the first overall pick, obviously, for the Vikings, is working with the second team still. He's getting a lot of reps, though, in the nickel, and you see him kind of shadowing Captain Munnerlyn and Jabari Price when he can. The Vikings just want to be more versatile with their draft picks. You saw that with Anthony Barr, too, when he took reps at defensive end at the start of last year. They just want to find out what are these guys good at, what can we test them at, what do they improve on, and what do we want to scale back. So it's interesting to see where they're moving these guys around. Tyrus Thompson, the 6th round pick, is your first team right guard right now. Well, TJ Clemmings was getting those looks earlier, but now for the past few weeks it's been all Tyrus Thompson. So that is still a revolving door, and we'll have to see how that ends up. But unless Judd's got anything else to add. Corners?
Josh Robinson.
Oh, that's right.
Might as well give the people the update on the guy.
I forgot about that.
Talk about not being able to stay on the field.
Josh Robinson was not out there at practice today on Tuesday for the Vikings. He was inside rehabbing an undisclosed injury. Mike Zimmer said, that's it. We're just going to leave it at that he's injured and that he can't be out here, which is a little odd because he was practicing on Thursday and they hadn't had a practice again until today. So something happened where he woke up and wasn't feeling right, wasn't able to get out.
And Mike Zimmer says of injured players,
can't make the club in the tub, Judd.
We can end with that.
Yep, so that's where it's going to be for today. Appreciate you checking out 1500ESPN.com. Please check back for more. We'll have videos and more podcasts and updates from the rest of Mandatory Minicamp this week. For Judd and myself, thank you very much.